Is this uncomfortable? Is this uncomfortably close to the screen? It probably is, and then it makes me look down because I have to look down to see it and stuff like that. Anyway, today, I think this is episode 3. And I don't know why I'm calling them episodes. It makes it really pretentious. It sounds stupid. It sounds like I'm making a series of things. I'm really not. I'm just messing around. Anyway, today I wanted to talk about one of my favorite things in Netflix, right? And I've written about this too, and it always just cracks me up. Is anybody who's gone on Netflix has no doubt noticed it. Is they give you these really comically specific categories that are tailored for you. So like one of the ones I got the other day, and actually you have written a list for of the best ones in this was like critically acclaimed, gritty action adventure movies. So they weren't just action adventure movies, and they weren't just critically acclaimed ones. They had to be gritty on top of that. And it's also always kind of funny because how they define gritty, what fits under gritty, all that stuff. It's just kind of amusing to see. Excuse me. So usually they give you like, I don't know, 20, 15, 20, sometimes 30 in those lists if you kind of scroll around on it and stuff like that. And they're usually pretty good, you know, if you like those kinds of movies. And like, for instance, I did a top 10 of one of them, and I'll probably do a top 10 of others before when there's a lot. But I have one come up yesterday that I thought was also comically specific, and it only had 3 movies worth noting, so I figured I might as well just talk about it here and be done with it. It was called Emotional Military Movies Based on Real Life. So some of the ones you'd think would be in that category, the obvious ones, either aren't on Netflix or for some reason they didn't put it in there. Like, for instance, Schindler's List, you'd think would fit into that grander category. Not on there. Life is Beautiful. Though I don't know if that's actually based on a true story. I mean, Schindler's List is, but I don't know if Life is Beautiful is. I mentioned those two because there's one that's very akin to it as one of the 3 that I like. But anyway, they only had 3 in their actual list that I thought were worth noting. They had some others that were okay, but they only had 3 that were any really, really good. First one is a little movie you might have heard of called Braveheart. Mel Gibson wearing a skirt with a blue face, yelling, screaming, cutting people's heads off, and in the end getting pulled apart. And in real life, I guess William Wallace, they cut his body up to a bunch of parts and put him all over the empire to scare people from rebelling, and it had the exact opposite effect. I think they actually mentioned that at the end of the movie. That's one of those things that you know about history, but you don't know if you know it about history because of the movie, or if you know it about history because you've actually read something about it in, you know, a historical document. The truth is, for me, I probably just heard about it in the movie, and I'm just completely assuming that it's real because everything I know either from movies or from really quickly read novels. Anyway, Braveheart, you've probably seen it. It's very long. It's got some great sequences. I think you could have made it a little bit shorter in hindsight, but it's got some wonderful battle scenes. The ending is no doubt emotionally charged and works exceptionally well. I don't know that it was necessarily a Best Picture winner. And I love Mel Gibson, and I think he's great in it. I think he was frankly a little too old to play the part. But, you know, that being said, you're getting nitpicky when you get into all those things about Braveheart. When it's all said and done, one of the best scores in recent movie history. Just a terrific score. Makes it feel even more epic. And really one of the great battle speeches. You know, not quite Henry V good, but not as far off as most of those battle speeches are. So, thumbs up. Braveheart. Number 2, and it's one of the reasons why I probably thought of Schindler's List and Life is Beautiful, because this will kind of fit into that same ilk, is a movie called The Pianist, which, you know, won Adrien Brody an Oscar as Best Actor. Also, you know, guys surviving the Holocaust, Jews surviving the Holocaust. Always fascinating to watch. You know, really well done. Brody is terrific in it. Again, I think the movie frankly drags a little bit in parts. Also, if you are the kind of person who likes this movie, you've probably seen this movie. Not a bad thing, and you probably want to see it again. Definitely worth watching. Not, you know, top 10 movies of all time or anything like that, but definitely worth a view. The third, and my favorite of all these movies, is a movie that you may or may not have seen or heard of. It came out in 1980. It's an Australian movie called Breaker Morant. Now, right around the same time, Breaker Morant, they came out, two great Australian war movies came out at the same time, or close to the same time. One was Breaker Morant, the other was Gallipoli. Gallipoli kind of became more famous, mostly because it was starring Mel Gibson. And this is right before Road Warrior, I think. After Mad Max, before Road Warrior, before Lethal Weapon, obviously. And so this is kind of right when Mel Gibson was kind of breaking through. And this was one of his first crossover movies that kind of became famous here in America. And Gallipoli. Gallipoli's terrific, terrific movie. An ending that rips your heart out. Really, really well done. Film. Breaker Morant's better. Breaker Morant is a true story based on 3 lieutenants in the Australian Army who, during the Boer Wars, which were the Boer Wars, were the wars in South Africa, when farmers were crying revolt against the British Empire. And the British Empire, as they would often do, actually employed for their front lines for a lot of these kinds of battles, they would employ Australian troops to go on those because they kind of viewed them as more disposable. At any rate, 3 Australian lieutenants are being put on trial for having killed a prisoner, something they did under order, but the general is using them as scapegoats to try to hide some of the grander war crimes and greater war crimes that he and his troops had committed over there during the Boer Wars. They get a lawyer named Breaker Morant, as fate may have it, and he puts on a much better defense and brings much more attention to it than they expected. You can kind of see how it goes. It's kind of like, plotting wise, it sounds certainly like A Few Good Men. Obviously, this predates A Few Good Men by quite a few years. And there are no doubt similarities, but this is very different in that it is, obviously it took place many years before. This took place around the turn of the century. It takes place in a much more isolated scenario. But it really does a terrific job. While A Few Good Men is about obeying orders in peacetime, and part of the backdrop of A Few Good Men is trying to understand in peacetime what they're going through. These were things that happened in war, and this was really talking about the horrors of war and what we do during war, what men do during war, right or wrong, and where is that line, and when should you say no, and when what's reasonable, and what's the right thing to do in order to win a war. Anyway, couldn't recommend Breaker Morant enough. Stars a bunch of people you've never heard of. You'd recognize a few of them here and there. They bounced around on occasional American movies and TV shows, but generally speaking, these aren't gentlemen that you would have known or heard of. But I could not recommend Breaker Morant more highly. So anyway, to recap, Braveheart, you've seen it, you know what it is. Good watching. Better to kind of come in and out of it now. Like you catch it on and you watch like the battle scene and the big speech and the spears and yeah, it's great. And then the music swells and he goes, whoa! And then you turn it off for a while, then you kind of check back in later on. The Pianist, terrific movie if you're kind of in the mood for that kind of thing. Great to watch through. Breaker Morant, turn off this video once it's done. Go to Netflix, watch Breaker Morant. You will not regret it. All right, that's it for today. Talk to you.